Hello everyone, I'm Sanidita Desi Janarukmi as the first speaker of NSDC Municipality. So ladies and gentlemen, imagine there is a house with a leaking roof and a kitchen lacking food. It would be illogical for the head of the family to prioritize lending the rest of his savings to a wealthy neighbor in the city in the hope of earning interest next year, right? Therefore, we are the opposition team reject today's motions. Sovereign Wealth Funds, or SWF, that has been clearly defined by the Pro Team, were established to strengthen the foundation of the national economy, not to prioritize international investment. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's get into the first argument. But before that, we will give some notes. The Pro Team say that SWF is not to be placed in their own economy, which has many financial risks. But isn't there even more risk in the outside world? Then there was a question in their closing statement that should they place their national wealth in an unstable domestic environment? Well, we will ask back, is the international environment definitely stable? Who guarantees it? Doesn't every side have its own risk? When in fact, the international world is full of economic storms that we can't control. Prioritizing to putting the money abroad is like putting eggs in someone else's shaking basket. Well, the argument is the Pro Team afraid that domestic investments will suffer when the domestic economy crashes. But they forget that the global stock market is very sensitive. If there is a war in the Middle East, a political crisis in America, or a global pandemic, the stock values of the world's top companies can down overnight. The difference is if our money is invested domestically, our government still have the power to save it through economic policy. But if our money is lost in the American or European stock market due to a global crisis, developing countries have no power whatsoever. We can only resign ourselves to watching our national wealth go up in smoke. For example, during the 2008 global financial crisis, if I am not mistaken, large investment institutions owned by Singapore and China lost tens of billions of dollars because they bought shares in large American banks that suddenly went bankrupt. This is proof that no matter how great a foreign company is, it can also be destroyed when a global crisis hits. So the Pro Teams claim that international investing is definitely safe in the long run is completely wrong. Placing money abroad doesn't eliminate risk, it trades domestic risk for a far more dire global risk that we can't control. And then the second argument is that domestic investments such as building toll roads, ports, or power plants is not a political project that loses money. It is a real business with huge continuous profits. The Pro Team argues that domestic investment in developing countries will inevitably be used as a political tool for electoral popularity. This is outdated thinking. Today's SWF are run by financial professionals, not politicians. They only want to fund domestic projects that generate clear financial returns. When an SWF builds a toll road or port, the people who use the facility will pay tolls or port rental fees. That money will then be returned to the state treasury with a steady profit. As a bonus, this good infrastructure will make the country's economy more advanced and independent. So, the Pro Team concerned that SWF funds will be wasted for political gain can be addressed with an independent legal system. Domestic projects can provide high financial returns while simultaneously building the nation. Then we move on to the third and final argument. The primary purpose of collecting state funds is to protect the country and its people in times of hardship. It would be extremely selfish to allow the domestic economy to collapse while our money is busy enriching companies abroad. The Pro Team agrees that if the domestic economy weakens, domestic investment will automatically lose its value, and the SWF should act as a savior by keeping the money safely abroad. This logic seems a bit strange. The main essence of the SWF in developing countries in developing countries is to be a defense fortress. When our country faces a food or energy crisis, these SWF funds must be immediately allocated to the local agriculture and energy sectors so that domestic prices remain low and people do not starve. If we are think and prioritize to put our money in international investment, our domestic economy could collapse completely. If the country is already in ruins, what's the point of having large savings abroad? So, the true financial protections function of SWF isn't by fleeing to foreign markets, but by strengthening our own domestic economy to be immune from all kinds of global crises. So, ladies and gentlemen, three important points that strengthen our position today are: first, the international market is not a safe place, but rather the center of a global crisis storm that we cannot control. Second, domestic projects such as infrastructure, food, and energy are not political projects that lose money, but rather tangible commercial businesses with long-term benefits. And third, the best financial protection for developing countries is not saving in other countries, but building our own economy foundations to be immune from global crisis. This wealth fund is born from the land and resources of a nation. This money must work to build the nation's future. For true economic independence, we are proud to stand as the opposition. Thank you.